Hey up all, welcome back to the Propagandist channel as we continue on with our series looking at RWBY-related content across the internet. Now, the last episode obviously we did a few short ones that have been recommended by you viewers out there, and in this one we're going to do something a bit more substantial. So, the video in question that we're going to be looking at is RWBY Behind-the-Scenes RT site. Now, technically this is a compilation of videos, and I found it on Internet Archive again. It was suggested to me by a viewer, and basically this might be quite a substantive one. Now, the reason I didn't sort of include this one in the previous one is because if I did try to do the list of videos that I've been recommended in order, it would have been a bit weird, because I would have got through the RWBY Japanese Actresses Meet RWBY, the RT Live Japan trip, RWBY Plays RWBY, and the RWBY Volume 3 bloopers, which would have taken about, what, somewhere in the region of 12 minutes. And then suddenly had this massive video resulting in in an episode going on for what, potentially over an hour. So not that I haven't done hour-long episodes before, but I kind of wanted to put this one into a video of its own, given how big it's potentially going to be. So basically, it's apparently a compilation of behind-the-scenes videos from RWBY from back in the day. I think they sort of relate to volumes 5 and 6, possibly, just judging from the description. Because what I basically did was, the viewer who suggested it had left a huge list of things, and this was one of them. And the way they've worded it, and I've got it copied and pasted here on Word document, is RWBY Behind-the-Scenes RT site, search on Internet Archive for V5 and V6 Behind the Scenes. It also then says V6 BTS Behind the Scene, I assume, is viewable on YouTube via RWBY playlist by GTH004. And I looked at the YouTube one for V6, the RWBY playlist by GTH004, but then I compared it to this Internet Archive one, and the Internet Archive one seems to have more in it. So I'm thinking, we'll watch this Internet Archive one, and then if there's anything that has been missed from that, we can always look, maybe in a future episode, at this RWBY playlist by GTH004 on YouTube, in case there's anything, like I say, that wasn't on our Internet Archive. Maybe the person who left that particular suggestion could clarify that for me, just in case there is anything in there that's worth going to that specific YouTube playlist for. But yeah, I mean, looking at some of the stuff then that's in here, it's quite a lot. Well, there's quite a lot of stuff actually. We're looking at potentially 27 short videos. Now, they range from about 2 to 4 to 5 minutes, so this is going to be a long one, but I think it's worth it. So brace yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'm going to keep this intro fairly short, to put it that way, because obviously, it being a big reaction that we're going to do here, let's not waste any time. Let's just get to it. Okay, here we are on the Internet Archive site. So let me actually just show you what we've got here. So as you can see, it's a huge list of stuff, 27 shorts, and some of them are 45 minutes, but some of them are only short, maybe 2 or 3. So, this is what we're going to do in this episode. So we're going to start with this one that's literally just called The Start at 3 minutes. Let's go with this one. So if I maximise it, boom. I wonder if these will sort of autoplay and roll through each one. If they do, that actually would be ideal. This is about art then.
I'd say one of the most cool and rewarding parts of working in a creative field is to be able to think about things and then have them come to life.
So I was just checking the volume.
Since the very beginning of the show, there's some areas and characters that we've been thinking about for years now at this point, and to see some of them start to come to life, to see Haven, to see my heart come to life, I think it's one of those things where it's never exactly what I had in my head, but for good reason. It's the end, it's the culmination of all the artists that work on it.
Once you read the script.
That's actually a fair point. He just said what I ultimately produced wasn't necessarily what was ultimately in my head, but it was close. It was still good. And that's true. What you have in your head can be very hard to just translate exactly down into whatever medium you're working in. And so, you have to remember that, of course, whatever medium you're working in, your tools that are available to you will shape what you're ultimately able to produce. And so, what you picture up here, depending on what tools you've got, you might not necessarily be able to get that exactly down on paper, but you can still nonetheless get something close to it, which I think is a point worth making. 3, 2, 1, resume.
And get a vague idea of what we're going to do. We then go to Carrie and ask him what he's kind of feeling about the whole thing. And getting his kind of intricate little thoughts and getting a brain dump from him. Once we have that, we can go out and do like a rough pass and like try and figure that whole business out and then come back to him and then present him all these options. For Volume 5, a big thing that we were trying to figure out, especially once we read the scripts, was the city of Mistral itself.
Oof.
And it's this huge,
Beautiful
sprawling city that goes over an entire mountain. And we have to populate that whole thing and make it feel like this vast, vast thing. That was like one of the big focuses for this, because this was going to be one of our main sets. Like, there was definitely like more fleshed out than a lot of the other ones were.
Volume 4 of RWBY, we rebuilt everything from the ground up. So the characters especially got a lot of attention, a lot of treatment in terms of getting them set up in Maya, and then 3ds Max, and then of course Pencil. With Mistral, the only real kind of touchstone we have into the season was the final mat that you see at the end of episode 12. And Rangers flying into Mistral into Haven. So that was kind of like, this is where we're going to be. This is where a large chunk of our time is going to be. We're going to be in this city. And that was where a lot of the conversations started. What will the school look like? What will the general vegetation and whatnot look like as well? So having those conversations kind of helped inform us of what we wanted this part of the world to look like.
I'd really love it if the audience really gets a view of just like what we can do and what we can achieve in art, because we've added more. With each season we've added more and more and more characters, more sets, more 2D elements. The subject matter is more, and I hope that people actually like see that and can recognize it.
As much work as we do, it's always great to see it when it's lit and moving, and it looks fantastic. So I'm really proud of
They did
how our
do
characters
well.
are looking, how our environments are looking. As a team, how we're all just kind of meshing,
You know,
working together to really make RWBY better than it's.
Despite
so it's a great thing to be a part of.
okay, it's nearly. I should let this finish and then I'll speak. I was going to say, actually, there's a blank moment here. Despite the fact that obviously, I did think there were some valid criticisms of Volume 5 because of its production issues and all that, you can't deny the art in Volume 5 is gorgeous. It is gorgeous to look at. So they did, do well with that one. Right, Anima Sky's fight. Let's go to this one. 3 minutes 39. Oh, Internet Archive. There we go. I thought it wasn't working for a moment then.
So what do we mean by VFX in this context? VFX is it's particle simulations. So you've got smoke, fire, fireflies, you've got explosions, you've got dust. It's all the stuff that just adds a whole bunch of sexy production value to any given shot.
And probably causes your software to absolutely lag like crazy when you're trying to render it, depending on how much you're putting in.
To us, and we had this big idea to have this fight. It's going to be a ship fight with Weiss, so we have lots of dust, lots of explosions, lots of shatter effects that go on in this episode. We're setting physics capabilities inside Maya, so we're setting the gravity, we're setting force fields, we're setting all these different things, and then we have the computer simulate. So it's really cool to see that final outcome once a long simulation has happened, and kind of controlling the physics behind something instead of controlling it directly.
The hardest parts were figuring out exactly what kind of effect we wanted. We had a wind effect, which drawing air can be a little bit hard to figure out. I spent a lot of time watching anime and looking at different ways in which people had drawn air and trying to come up with something that would resemble 2D but have a very 3D feel to it. We also had some fireballs that had to be developed from scratch that required not only coming up with the base of it, but also with some very anime-esque flares, so that was kind of neat to explore.
I would like to show you guys one of the effects that was really like a layered effect kind of thing. So in chapter 2, we have the ship that goes down and runs into a cliff, and there's a bunch of shatter, there's explosion, there's dust, so it's more than just one effect. It's multiple effects layered together to form the shot. So here's like a close-up of the actual explosion once the ship hits. So we have the smoke trail coming down and hits the cliff breaks into pieces, and the explosion kind of takes over and turns into smoke. Behind all of that, we have the shattered cliff itself. You can see on impact how our new shatter tool allows us to take geometry.
God,
and
takes so
after we
much
take
work.
that geometry, we'll shatter it all, and then physics will take over. So the ship will hit the big cliff, and pieces will fly off. And what's really cool is we can select these individual pieces, and then what we'll do is emit dust off all of those. So the individual pieces will have dust kind of flying off them, so you get this really good trailing dust kind of look that goes onto it. We have the smoke trail, the explosion, the dust, and the shatter effect all combined into one shot to kind of make the entire effects one.
Yeah, it must take so much work. Must be quite time consuming, that.
And these days now it's a combination of, we're still on After Effects, but we're doing a lot of our sims using various plugins inside of Maya, so that's been pretty exciting. If VFX is something that you're interested in doing, it's never been a better time to get your hands on some software and learn how to really enhance your shots with things that used to take an entire company's worth of people to do years ago. Now all this stuff is just at the touch of a couple of buttons on your own computer at your desk. So, if VFX is something that you're interested in getting into, I would just start digging in. It's never been a better time.
It's one of those things, I suppose, that, if you're a young person, it's good to start learning, experimenting around with 3D softwares, that kind of thing, and just playing around, seeing what you can produce, and just regularly doing that. All right, next one, another face in the crowd, 3 minutes 51. So, they're basically going through volume 5 at the moment, but I'm guessing crowds with lots of unique looking characters.
Is a lot about shot composition and trying to make everything look as good as possible in camera. And so for the work that we're doing right now, we have so many background characters that we need people that not only knew how to do the compositional stuff in Maya, but also be able to look at that stuff in conjunction with hundreds of background characters to try to make everything jive.
When we got the script for episode 3, it's actually kind of funny because I wound up doing the storyboards for that speech, and even then I saw the crowd and I was like, oh, okay, that's not too bad. I was a fool. It turned out to be much more of an undertaking with a much larger focus on crowd reactions.
Because the thing is, like, I imagine for this, it's not just the fact that you obviously have to design each individual character in that crowd. Especially if you're really going to try and go for an attention to detail. You're not just going to do what they did in earlier volumes where maybe you have the same character model repeated from time to time. But I imagine it's also, like they said, how are you getting them to stand, what pose are you putting them all in, and you need to try and sort of make each person look unique and individual, not just in their appearance but also how they stand, how they carry themselves, that kind of thing, their facial expression, etc, etc. So that's going to require a lot of attention to detail, that. Absolutely. 3, 2, 1, resume.
Than we had done in previous episodes.
This time around, we are actually using different programs this time. We're actually using Golem as our simulation software. With that, we've been able to go from using traditional characters like we did in Volume 4 to actually having simulations now in Volume 5. This means that we're able to lighten up the load on the animators, or actually able to animate the scene, focus on the action, and we're able to add crowds kind of as a background element to that. What's really nice with this is instead of doing between 20 or 30 characters that we did last season, we're able to get up to 100 characters to even 300 characters that we have in the Belladonna set.
What we need to do
That must be really taxing on your PC.
We're going to do it based off of the menagerie female character that we have set up. So once this comes in, we need to change a few settings because in Maya we use centimeter and not meter. If we use meter, things get really, really small. And now, with everything in place, we should just be able to hit play. It plays on the timeline, and that's when the characters pop up after they load in. So here are the actual characters that load in based off of the character file that we created earlier. And what we need to do is we actually need to set up the skeleton based off what we call an Uber rig. The Uber rig has every part and piece added to it, so it's a very heavy rig. So this is just the bones of it. If we actually go to the geometry tab, this is what it looks like.
Oh gosh.
This is what it looks like to have every piece of geometry on a character. And this is just for the female character. So what we do is we break that up, Golem randomizes it, and that's when we actually get a file that looks like this.
A bunch of T-posing ladies.
This library animation. You see I can get animation put on the Faunus character. And so what Golem lets you do is actually take that animation off of the character rig and go ahead and we can put it on a large crowd of people like this. And so you see the characters are moving with the same motion that she has, but at all different timings to give the illusion of different people doing different things. It is really cool once those animations do start to come in.
Sorry, I'm just going to pause again. I mean, yeah, I get why they do that. Use preset animations, because otherwise you have to create each animation cycle, I guess, yourself from scratch. Whereas if you just use a preset one, you can load it to a bunch of characters. You can make maybe like minor tweaks to it, just to add a bit of individuality to certain characters. But yes, I mean, if you're obviously doing animation on a budget, then a lot of animators probably do use presets, preset animation loops and cycles, that kind of thing, I would guess. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
And you start looking at things on cameras, and you see like a crowd that really looks like they're murmuring to each other, or that really looks like they're reacting or listening to somebody. It starts to feel alive again, and you kind of have these moments of like everything's coming together, everything's working. So.
Okay. So that was that one about your crowds, ladies and gentlemen. Next one is setting the scene, 2 minutes 58. So what aspect of Volume 5 is this one going to be about? So I'm wondering if this is a combination of Volume 5 and Volume 6. Because if it is, what I could always do, rather than doing the whole thing in one video, is say do the Volume 5 stuff, and then do the Volume 6 stuff next time.
It's a pretty dense set. It's not that big, but it's just chock full of stuff. It has foliage, it has a ton of tents, it has a ton of spikes lining the walls, it has garbage, and that's not even counting the characters and animations. So keeping that set down to a manageable level of polys was quite the challenge.
Usually we start with a concept piece, and from there we make 2 different versions of each set. One set is our standard low-res version, and the other is our high-res, more detailed version. The reason why we do this is so that when we work on our low-res version, we can work out our spatial distances as well as overall layout. And then when we finally get to working on our high-res version, which is our final version, we have everything flushed out and ready to go, and we can start really putting in the highly detailed work that's needed to go into the final cut.
Alright, so this is the bandit camp's entrance. This is where a little bit of the fighting takes place.
This is an interesting shot of it, because I don't think we ever see like an overhead shot, do we, in Volume 5 of the bandit camp? So this actually gives you a sense of the shape of it. It has this weird sort of gate and then this straight section that curves then into the main body of the camp itself. Interesting. Okay, let's resume.
Right now there's no foliage or trees because it's pretty heavy. We have to treat them as boxes, otherwise the scene gets super sluggish. Right after the entrance, we have all the huts and all the debris that you can see here. You can clearly see that this is all scavenged stuff, stolen stuff, barrels, crates full of contraband or whatever. There's trash everywhere, pretty much. It's a filthy place. They clearly don't care. There's probably a few dozen huts, like a mini village. So this is where Weiss is kept prisoner. And over here we have the Queen's Palace. This is Raven's tent. It's the biggest one, the most legal looking, and the back of the tent. And from here you can see like the entirety of the
it actually extends.
camp.
Yeah,
It's
a fair size.
chock full of stuff. So it's a pretty heavy scene, and there you have it.
I think Bandit Camp is a balance of a lot of different things. It's a big set, it's got a lot of detail. It's using a lot of speed tree. That is something new that we've been using this season as well. And it was really great because we could model out really lush and full foliage, but at the same time maintain that painterly anime style that we know fans love to see. We hope you like it.
Well, I mean, I did. I think the visuals were great in Volume. I said 9 again in Volume 5, so that evidently worked. Okay, next one. All of the lights. 3 minutes 48.
General workflow is basically we get all the assets that all the other departments have created for us, and we compile them all into our light files. And if you think of it as just a set, like in a regular movie studio, we have the set and the characters, but there's no lighting in there, and we're kind of like the 3D gaffers of the industry. So we put the lights in and make the characters and environments look as best as possible.
We use two different pieces of software for lighting, Maya for the environments and 3ds Max for the characters. In Maya, we use a renderer called Redshift, which is a physically based renderer, so it imitates how light works in real life. When we're lighting an outdoor set, we have one major light source, which imitates the sun, and then we use kind of a fill light to create the ambient light to fill in some of the shadows so it's not so harsh. In 3ds Max, we have a plugin called Pencil, and that gives the characters kind of a hand-drawn look. And we basically have one type of lighting we use to fill in the characters to make them match the environment as best as possible, or to create rims. We used to use just two zones, a lit zone and a shadow zone for the characters. But this season we've introduced a third zone to create more rim lighting, to give characters a separation from the background, and also offer like a brighter, more directional feel to the characters, just to make them really pop.
Never really thought about that actually, rim lighting.
One of our environments, and
but it makes sense.
So here is the environment looking through in Maya.
Especially if you have like a very colourful set like Menagerie, where there's a lot of very vivid hues, you know, greens, blues, other colours. Yeah, I could imagine actually that amidst all of that colour, your character model actually could become sort of lost, kind of drowned out amidst the colour, so to speak, if that makes sense. So actually, yeah, that makes complete sense for the inclusion of rim lighting, just to add sort of what is basically a very small but nonetheless perceptible border between your character and the colours of the surroundings, so that way your character doesn't feel like they're sort of overwhelmed by all the colours around them and lost amidst a sea of different hues. Makes a lot of sense, yeah. 3, 2, 1, resume.
And so essentially the first thing what we're going to do is set up our camera. So I already did that beforehand, and so I'll go through the storyboards and find which angles I need for the camera. I have these here. So the first thing I'm going to do is add my fill light. And I currently have it set so the textures are turned off. This gives a better overall look of what the light is doing without the interference of the textures. So this is the overall fill for, I believe this is morning set. And then we'll take a look at adding the sunlight. And I want to render this one separately to see its impact of shadows. And this will give the overall warm feeling with slightly longer shadows. And then you want to mix those together. So here it is with just the fill and key light for the sun on without the textures. And it looks overblown, but when you turn the textures back on, you get a nice,
looks beautiful,
overall warm morning feel.
Yeah, the Menagerie is different from other sets that we've done for RWBY because it's more of a tropical feel, so you get to have like a warmer, more vibrant color palette to play around with. You can tell there's a rich culture to this community in Menagerie, so you really want that to come through with the lighting and the colors that are available to you.
Honestly, through lighting, you really want people not to notice. You want them to be engaged in the environment and not really think about the 3D or anything that's involved. Just want it to be immersive.
But the lighting is really important though too, that immersion, right? Otherwise, you know, if the lighting's not correct, you will notice it. So, right, next one, Skin and Bones, 5 minutes 20, one of the longer ones in this one. Is this about character models then? I would guess. Character modelling and rigging, yeah.
Okay, so whenever we start modeling a character, Concept provides us with a concept of the character. This is Vernal's concept right here. They give us all the different views of the character, front, side, back, as well as a scale reference that you can see over here. And once we have all of that, we start the model. So every character starts off with a base head, so we kind of have a starting point for everybody. But then we just take that and we shape it into what looks like the concept, and we match the concept as close as possible. This is like the finished model with textures. Of course, we don't have textures when we first start modeling, so normally it looks more like this when we're working on it. So you can see all the definition we put into the model here, different wrinkles, and basically the rule of thumb.
Clothing textures, yeah.
Then we model it in. And we use what's called creases to hold the smoothing into specific shapes where we need it to. After the model's done, we go in and we do the textures, which turn textures on. There's that. If you're into modeling, you know what a texture is, but it's basically the color that is put onto the geometry. To get the line work you see in the show, we go in the 3ds Max, and we use a software called Pencil. Pencil does all the cell shading for us and the line work that you see. But basically, it's the same model run in the Max with just a few settings applied. You can get pretty close to what you see in the show, which is that.
Okay.
Here she's got her cell shading on with default lighting. The black lines are drawn on. And yeah, she's pretty much ready to go.
We usually, as we're doing this, talk to rigging to make sure that certain either articles of clothing or if the character has armor pieces that they're able to either deform properly, or if they're not supposed to deform, maybe we have to build them in certain ways.
In the pipeline, we're between modeling and animation. So we pretty much take the models that the modeling team makes and we make them animatable. So like how people and animals and any living being has skeletons, we add joints to these characters.
So when we
This
get
must
a
be
model
real
from
tricky.
modeling, it's not really animation friendly. Our job is to put in a skeleton on the character and make it so that animation can do their job.
Because you saw before how there was one where he sort of got the Vernal character model and he sort of raised one of her legs and then he was adjusting the belt. So I imagine, yeah, you have to put bones onto a skeleton, onto pretty much every aspect of the character. Because otherwise, I suppose, let's say, you know, with that Vernal example, if you didn't put one on the belt, her leg would raise and then it would be like clipping into her belt and it would look really weird. So again, it's like the attention to detail that you need for this. You've got to like look at the whole character model and think of everything within that. And I don't envy the person who has to do this because I would imagine this is probably quite tricky to do. 3, 2, 1, resume.
So here's the skeleton for Vernal. We need to place each of these bones where they should go, like accurately on their bodies. So you can see here the wireframe for the elbow. The elbow bone lines up pretty well with the back of the elbow, and you have the wrist, and you have all the hand joints. Once we have these bones placed, we have a very nifty tool that we can run, and it creates the biped rig. Once we have the auto rig down, we can start working on
That's the nightmare version of Vernal right
the
there.
process of actually giving the character the ability to
Nightmare
move.
Vernal doesn't
But as you
exist, she
can see
can't
right
hurt
now,
you.
The rig is moving, and the controls are moving, but the character isn't actually doing anything. So to do that, we grab the skeleton and we grab the meshes that we want. Select everything, and go into rigging, skin, and bind skin. Now you can see that I can move these controls around.
There you go.
And her elbow looks very messed up.
Yeah.
So after probably a few hours of work,
Oof.
we get a more final version of the rig that actually moves in a way that feels a lot more natural. You can see that the elbow actually bends without causing weird bumps. Another very big part of the rigging process is actually rigging the character's face. So for RWBY, we went with a blend shape face rig, and all of these new meshes that you see on the screen are responsible for giving the characters their expressions. So this is the A shape, that's the left blink, that's the right blink. And the face rig puts all of these together into something that animators can actually animate with. So they'll move these controls around, and now the characters have actual expressions.
The relationship between modeling and rigging is really, really close here at Rooster Teeth. We have to work together every day to make sure the models are made in a way that the rig can do what it needs to do. And anytime they have a request from us, we get it done as soon as possible, and the same goes the other way. The show wouldn't be what it is without them.
Oh, I guess that one ends there then. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I just had a thought. Since there are 27 videos in this compilation, we could probably actually, I don't know, say split 9 by 9 by 9. Because looking at time, we're only on video 6 and already we've taken quite a bit of time there. Okay, perfect shot. I mean, at minimum, I think we'll do the first 9 videos in this particular episode. Can always then do the next 9 in the next video.
So what we'll do is we'll get
So
all
it's
the
about
pre-production
composition?
assets, storyboards, the animatic, the motion capture, and essentially what we'll do is we'll look at the animatic and say, okay, this is the general feel that we're going with the cameras and we're going with the acting and the scene, so how can we put the character in the best light possible? How can we get a reaction from the audience with the way the camera is placed, whether it's up high, low, to the side? Is there a movement in there? Is there any way that we can do like an action to help heighten the comedy or to even help heighten the drama?
We always use Maya, and when we set up the original file with like the animatics and the mocap footage, that's all in Premiere. We put up like the audio tracks, and then we put that into Maya, where we sync the mocap with like the character data, and that's when we put in all the sets and all the props and characters and everything that's going to be in the scene eventually.
So this is what a finished master looks like once all of the mocap has been transferred, the audio has been synced up, the set has come in, and it's been dressed. We bring in all the other characters, all the assets had to be brought in, all the chopsticks had to be brought in individually. So once we get everything in place, we will...
Everything on the table as well.
Get into the tracks editor. We bring in the master file that came in with the mocap. So it's the exact same length. It has both takes of the mocap in there. We like to leave everything in just in case the animators need to go and pull data from an earlier or later take. So this first shot is from 620 to 659. We'll adjust our frame range to reflect that. And then we'll go in and we'll start setting the camera. So for this one, we're going to start with this shot here.
Nice concept art.
Be behind Yang, getting everybody's reactions, her kind of flexing and showing off. Then we have this nice long pan of everybody, and that's about where that take ends.
That Ruby.
So we have a rough idea of how to set up our shots. So we'll kind of play around with our focal lengths until we get it about right. In pre-layout, we try to get about 70% with our cameras before they go to animation. I mean, that's why we have a final camera department to come back and kind of fill in that extra 30% and really give the cameras some love, but just kind of blocking them out. And we just move on, so on down the line like that. We go through a review process with Carrie, usually leave all of our shots in the master until he approves them, and then we start the process of actually cutting them up and shipping them off to animation. And then they work through it, and then it comes back to us for final camera.
General philosophy with designing shots is...
So I'm just going to pause and comment. I imagine this takes a fair bit of work as well, because obviously what they've wanted to go with there is a very specific shot where you can see all the characters behind Yang actually reacting, as she says, to what Yang is doing. And I imagine, you know, it takes a bit of a pain in terms of making sure Yang is positioned at just the right distance from the other characters, so that when you put the camera behind her, the other characters are framed right, where you can basically see their faces properly. Because otherwise, you know, if she's like too close, RWBY might not be sort of framed correctly in sort of the arch of her arm and all that. So, yeah, probably another thing that can be a bit time consuming to actually do. Resume.
Actually how can I tell the story in the clearest way possible via the cameras? Because, you know, the audience's eye is always like searching, going back and forth, right and left, and you kind of want the eye to feel comfortable when viewing images in a sequence. Sometimes the philosophy of the shot is whether I think it looks good as a GIF or not, whether it's something that I think friends will want to share on social media, or even just like with their friends, like, oh, look at this cool clip, like, oh, look at what the camera does here. Essentially with camera, I try my best to make sure that, you know, it's entertaining.
True, you know, it's an art form. You got to think about these things and how they all fit together. Right, the complete package. Let's do this one. This one is 3 minutes 48. Is this about bringing everything together then?
Comp essentially takes all the layers, all the character passes, the environment, sky, the effects. We take all those and manipulate them individually, and then slice all those layers back together and render it into a single picture.
When a shot is ready to work on, we take the renders from lighting and we have a setup script, and it's constantly being changed and modified. So we create a template for every scene that has sort of like a look that's pre-built into it. And from there we go in and we do our color correction, we do our depth passes, we make it look like a finished shot. We have to do a lot of cleanup, we have to do a lot of tracing out, which we call rotoscoping, traveling mats, and yeah, I don't know, it gets pretty complex.
It's interesting because
I
the
imagine it
different
does.
scenes are just so different. We've got stuff like shadowy alleys, and then daylight, a lot of like God rays, and really just high contrast, early morning shots. So we're kind of running the gambit on this one.
So setting up the scene templates for Chapter 8, basically Zane had this rough starting point, and then I had to go in and kind of check it for robustness, use like different shots to set it up with different elements and see what's missing and what can be improved. We have to make a lot of custom effects so that things set up right with the script.
We use Adobe After Effects for compositing, and this is a fairly typical shot, a little more complicated than some of the simpler shots. And you can see we've got almost 30 layers active in the shot. But if I was to go into the character herself, let's look at Weiss in this example. This is a fairly typical setup for the character herself. You can see the overall character flat in the beauty layer. This is zone 1, which is the dark
Ghost Weiss.
side of Weiss.
Dark Weiss.
So just the dark colors. Then just the
That's
light
when Weiss has
colors,
evil thoughts.
Zone 2. This season we actually introduced a zone 3, which is at play in this shot with the light coming in the window. It's an additive shot. We actually introduced it with the Weiss trailer. It also is really handy when you have fire effects or muzzle blasts or things like that. It's adding kind of a nice additive look. We boost the whites of their eyes like that. And then, let's see, here's the line layer. A little easier to see like that. And finally, the glints in her eyes, which are these little tinier dots. And then you add all those together and you get Weiss. So when you're looking at the top level, you're seeing 25 different comp layers, but considering each of the character layers, each of their weapons is another 8 to 10 layers. Really, you're looking at the potential for hundreds of layers in a typical review shot.
Bloody hell, so how long does that take?
Because everything is so all over the place, I hope that everyone just kind of understands the journey that, at least visually, what we're going for. We're in, 2, 3 different cities at a time, different time of the day. I hope we sell that well enough.
Oh, you sure do. I mean, this is really giving such a good impression of just the amount of effort that probably has to go in to making just a single, I was going to say even a single episode, not even a single episode, just even several seconds of footage. I do feel like at the very least I'm going to come away from this with a real appreciation for, if you're doing animation professionally, just the amount of work, just the amount of skill you need on your team and all that. All right, next one is Can You Hear Me Now? And I think, to make this more manageable. Let's do 9 of these per video. So we'll spend 3 videos in total looking at what's on this Internet Archive page, and we'll do 9 each, just to keep each video to a certain size. Now, obviously that means there may be a bit of overlap in the next episode between volumes 5 and 6, you know, assuming that these are a mix of volume 5 and 6 and all that, which I think the recommendation said they were, that was left in a comment on YouTube and all that. But I think that just makes it more manageable, because looking at time, I don't think I'm going to be able to go through all of these today. So that's fine though. I mean, thing is, once I've recorded this, I will have the base minimum amount of pre-recorded content I'll need to take me through August and all that, so I'll be fine. And then if I get a moment during the next week or so to record the next set of shorts within this, that'll be great, because then that just gives me a bit of extra for when I eventually get back to my flat down south, and I can continue recording stuff. Right, can you hear me now? This is about sound design and all that. Oh, there we go. Audio, yes, it is.
The workflow for audio spans from the beginnings of production all the way through post-production. What that means is we record and edit dialogue at the very beginning after we've done scripts. Then we pass it off to the departments to work their magic. Once we've received the episodes from the other departments, we then take it into the sound design where we'll go in.
Okay, that's interesting, yeah. Because I think we've established before in other production diaries we've watched that, you know, when you're doing this kind of animation, dialogue gets recorded quite early. Because obviously the people who are doing the actual animation of the characters need to know, you know, what does each line of dialogue sound like, what's the intonation, what's the pace, because obviously they need to match mouth movements to the dialogue and things like that, and they need to make sure character expressions are fitting. They need to work on, obviously, you know, how can you use camera angles, lighting, I suppose everything else in order to kind of complement the audio. So yeah, I'm not surprised that the dialogue gets recorded quite early and all that. 3, 2, 1, resume.
Create the sound effects for every element in the episode.
Foley.
It spans from the ambiences through the Foley, even the more intricate things like the otherworldly creatures or weapons. After that's done, we pass it off to mix, where we'll then balance all the levels and make sure that the episode sounds good, from dialogue to sound to music.
So many of the scenes of RWBY, especially dialogue-heavy scenes, consist of small little actions such as shifting around where they're sitting or picking up a glass or even just patting somebody on the shoulder. They're very small movements, but each of those make a sound. And we will recreate those sounds during the Foley process. So one of us will actually go into the booth and either do a hand pat or pick up glasses or really whatever the scene requires to recreate those sounds and make it sound very natural into the environment itself. It really just helps sell the environment to me, and it's just, well, a little extra layer that you might not notice, but you would probably notice if it wasn't there. So what we're doing here is we're doing Foley. We're about to make the sound for Raven sharpening her sword with a whetstone. So how we do this is we have the movie on screen. Chris is in the other room, and he is controlling it for me, and then I'm just over here and I'm going to sync it to picture.
I see, so like you watch and you do it as they're doing it, and so that way you can try and get the timing right, sort of. Yeah, okay, I mean, simple, but makes sense. Resume. Probably have to rewatch it a couple of times, don't you? You probably watch it first to get an initial sense of the timing.
Because I needed the pipe to stop ringing.
And then you do it several
but
times.
I needed a solid metal sound, and that's how it worked.
So the mixing process starts off with the dialogue. First stage, it'll grab the dialogue and he'll clean it all up and make sure it sounds nice and pristine. Then he'll start to layer on various plugins that we use to make it pop.
This is the first time that we had to mix RWBY in-house, and we had to build it from the ground up. So first step is to get the raw audio files, and once we get those in, we go in and clean up clicks and pops, whatever it is that needs to be cleaned up, and make sure it's nice and clean. Once we're done with that, the second step is to bring in our templates that we've made.
So you have to do that cleanup with every line then. Man, another thing that probably takes ages unless obviously you have a fairly big team and therefore can spread the workload out and get things done concurrently. But yeah, because that's the thing. Like, imagine when you're doing voice acting, you know, it's easy for when you're speaking to accidentally insert a load of plosive sounds, like, you know, popping when you're saying like P's and B's, that kind of thing, which to be honest you're hearing probably right now from me. But yeah, like, you know, obviously there's kind of an art form with voice acting in terms of being able to sort of speak without kind of, you know, having those kind of distracting, very emphasised sounds like your plosives and that kind of thing. But no, like yeah, I imagine, you know, audio softwares like what they're using here, whatever software this is, probably have tools that can pick up sounds like, you know, popping sounds, that kind of thing, and then you can sort of like identify them and use the software to isolate and get rid of them. So I suppose what you have to do then is you have to listen to the line, each line through, identify moments where there's undesirable noises, figure out, you know, how to cut them out and get the software to remove anything similar to that. But then you probably have to re-listen to it through each and every one to make sure it hasn't cut out anything else or made the rest of the track sound distorted or anything like that. I would guess that's probably what you have to do. 3, 2, 1, resume.
And the templates are composed of different plugins, and each character has specific set of plugins and specific set of settings that applies only to that character. We do use the same plugins more or less overall, but they change dramatically from character to character because the voice is so different. Say we can take Raven's voice here. This is already EQ'd and it's going through a bunch of things. You bypass it. It's probably hard to hear it over the speakers, but it has a lot of low end in it that had to be cleaned out. And after that, I use this analog type EQ. Adds a lot of nice saturation. I'm cutting things out again, kind of molding it to sounding nice and natural. And if I bypass everything, sounds a lot weaker. That's going to go into other plugins and other chains, and it's going to get processed until it sounds exactly the way it needs to sound. For example, here we have her talking through the mask, so we have to create like a special filter for that. We're taking out a ton of frequencies. You can hear the difference between this and, for example, here when she doesn't have a mask.
Yeah, I see the difference. Or hear it.
Make it sound, you know, more realistic. She has something right in front of her face, mouth. That's kind of the gist of it. It's very, very basic, without getting too nerdy.
It's been very interesting for us to learn together as we work on this season, and we're incredibly thankful for you guys for watching and giving us your feedback and your thoughts on how the episodes have been sounding this season. It's been a wild ride, and we're really excited for you all to see the rest of the season.
There you go. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Yeah, looking at time, because it is ticking by, I think we'll sort of leave it at those first 9 for this video, and we'll do the next 9 in the next video and all that. I think, you know, that way it'll make it it'll put it in sort of bite-sized chunks. I like to say, you know, I was thinking, should I do like the Volume 5 related ones in one video and then the Volume 6 ones? But actually, no. I think it's easier just to do 999, and that way, you know, hopefully it'll sort of average out the time between each video and all that. Okay, let's take a jump cut here and let's have a post-reaction discussion. Okay, yeah, I checked the total running time for the footage that, you know, we've just done the reaction to, and it's over 45 minutes. So, yeah, if I kept going, we would no doubt end with an episode that's significantly over an hour at that rate. So, yeah, actually, I think, because there's 27 in total, dividing it 9 by 9 by 9 probably makes sense in that regard. So that way, you know, we do it over 3 episodes and all, which, you know, that's fine and all that. And if it spans, obviously, Volume 5 and 6 in the next episode, so be it. I think that's okay, because these are very much about technical aspects of the production. So this was really interesting because it gives a real window into the amount of work and effort that has to go in to making, you know, this show. And, you know, someone who has never been involved in any sort of animation profession or anything connected to it, this is real eye-opener, I'd say. It gives more and more of a sense of what this actually involves. And yeah, it's just fascinating overall. I mean, you know, the amount of layering, for example, of visuals, of audio, like this has to go through obviously so many hoops, so many sections of Rooster Teeth as a company before the final product is actually ready. Apologies, by the way, if my fan is making noise in the background. It's just otherwise it's going to be quite warm in here because it's now past midday, so the sun is at its height here, meaning that it's starting to blaze down a bit through my window and heat up the room quite significantly. But yeah, I mean, the amount of layering is just, it's astounding. And like I say, it must take so long. Even with a big team, it's probably quite time consuming. So I definitely feel like, you know, even just watching those 9 videos there, I really feel like I've come away with more and more of an appreciation for how much work must go into this behind the scenes. So yeah, it was quite fascinating and all that. I mean, the thing is, as someone who, you know, like I say, has never had any sort of background in animation, doesn't have any experience with working with animation tools, particularly like the body rigging, the design of obviously not just the texture of the character but also their skeleton. That sounds like such a time-consuming process. And the thing is, I'm saying that just as someone who plays Gary's Mod from time to time and obviously messes around with ragdolls in game, and you think about, for example, the amount of bones in those character models that probably go into them in order to have that character model flop around in a sort of semi-realistic way. Now you know, you can sort of think about that and then think about how you then have to put bones on every individual part of clothing that may need bones attached to it, so that, you know, when a character is moving, their body parts aren't, say, clipping into certain parts of their outfit or things like that. That actually reminds me a bit of the bloopers that we saw last video, where, you know, there was the one with Crow and his cape being slightly weird. You know, that's a part of his clothing that probably needs bones adding to it, so that when you're animating it, you can animate it correctly so that it's not clipping through his body, or, you know, it's moving in a way that is realistic in accordance with how his body is moving and the actual actions that he's performing, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those little things that I think when you're starting out in animation you probably can easily overlook, but the more experience you get, when you've actually produced a draft of an animation, you notice these things and you start to think, oh shoot, we need that animated properly, that kind of thing. And yeah, it probably just adds so much work onto the process, which is why, you know, ideally you want a really big team and all that, so then you can share, you can then parcel the workload out, so that way you can spread it out, you can try and make it more manageable, you can try and sort of make it take a bit less time because you've now got multiple people working on different tasks in the pipeline and all that. So wow, I mean, thinking about how obviously RWBY must have grown over the years as a team, and you think about how probably when they did Volume 1 it was a much smaller team and all that, so fewer people, meaning, you know, more tasks per person, I would assume. That, you know, probably meant that Volume 1 probably did take a long time to produce and all that, so I can really appreciate the show for the amount of effort that clearly has gone into it, you know, criticisms of aspects of the writing aside, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, you know, I don't think there's really much else for me to say, because again, you know, I'm not a specialist. I don't, you know, my technical knowledge of these things is quite limited. It's very much limited to what I'm seeing on these screens as I'm watching these videos. So, you know, I'm impressed, to put it that way. I'm impressed as a layman with no experience in animation. I'm impressed, and why wouldn't I be, and all that. So yeah, that's pretty good. And like I say, you know, next time, in the next episode, we'll watch the next 9 of them. And so we'll kind of continue this more sort of technical deep dive into just the production of RWBY overall in the next episode. So yeah, I mean, I'll keep this post-reaction fairly short then in that case, because there's really not much for me to talk about other than what I've said when I pause throughout that. And what I've said here. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies if I was a bit more subdued reaction-wise in that episode, but obviously, you know, that's not a very dramatic thing to watch. It's more technical. It's more about sort of the nitty-gritty detail of, sorry, I'm getting hiccups from my drink that I was drinking before. Yeah, that's probably a sign that I need to wrap up and go and get another drink and all that. But yeah, you know, I feel like, you know, for a lot of time there, as I'm watching it, it's just me sort of sat silently like, yeah, okay, that's interesting and all that. Not really saying all that much, but I'm sure you can understand why, because obviously this is not really drama, it's learning stuff, so, you know, that's what it is. Right, well in that case, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching, and join me next time where we'll continue on with this particular video, or set of videos rather, and we'll watch the next 9 and all that. At this point I'm starting to just repeat things that I've already said, so that's probably a sign that I really need to wrap up and all. So yeah, thank you for joining me. Obviously Strategist is my main channel, link in the video description. I do a lot of gaming content over there, in case anyone's interested in that. I'm sure there'll be something over there because it's quite an eclectic collection of different gaming series that I've done and all that. So yeah, join me over there if you want to. And if you did enjoy that, do leave a like, it's always appreciated. And I'll see you in the next part where we'll continue on with the behind the scenes stuff. Probably just getting more and more of a sense of, you know, how much work goes into it. And it'll probably just be more of me nodding along going, oh man, that's impressive, oh man, that must be so time consuming and all that. How many times can I react in that way before it gets boring, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, but join me for that, and I'll see you then. Goodbye, everybody.